Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path, and today's video is a trip video to Top Crossing Hut. Now that you see the map there on the screen, basically Top Crossing Hut is southeast of Lake William Hovell, which is approximately southeast of Cheshunt, which is in northeast Victoria. Track makes its way down Lake William Hovell, and there's bitumen till you get to Lake William Hovell, and that's a good spot to wear down right there, right next to the lake. Track's usually not an overly difficult drive. We actually did this in winter, so the river was up a bit. There was rain forecast for the day, but it was supposed to be in the morning and clearing, and instead, as you'll see in today's video, it was raining and foggy in the morning and it got heavier and heavier. Lots of fun river crossings on this particular trip, but we did get to the hut and back, although there was a bit of winching involved. Apologies there. The GoPro mounted on the car actually collected a lot of water droplets, which I didn't realise, so a lot of the GoPro footage wasn't that usable, and I've sort of used the best bits that I can. This first little puddle's not really a water crossing, but it's a little stream that runs through there, and it's concreted. The climb up from that though is mostly clay, often rutted, as it was on this particular trip, and can be slippery when wet. On the way in, traction was okay for us, but the way out was a bit of a different story, but fortunately we were going downhill, so it wasn't so much of an issue. It's not a real steep climb, but it's long and steady, and fairly hard packed clay before the track flattens out into a nice woodland track that sort of works its way along Lake William Hovell before getting to a couple of river crossings on the way. This one here is actually the first crossing. This is Evans Creek, I believe, one of the tributaries that feed into Lake William Hovell. Now the exit from this can be in pretty ordinary condition. Today it was pretty good. You can see had external footage as well as some GoPro footage there, which was nice to have. I have seen that exit quite torn up and rutted, but it does get graded from time to time. I should mention too, this track is open all year round. It's not one of the seasonally closed tracks, although others in the area are seasonally closed. And if you follow it like we did all the way through to Top Crossing Hut, it is literally one track in, one track out. Sandy Creek, which you'll see along the way, is the only other spot where you could turn off and head somewhere else. So this is Sandy Creek here, where we've just arrived and got our first look at the King River and realised just how high it is. So we pulled in here to have a bit of a look and think about it. At this point we're not intending to take that crossing, but we do come back later and head that way. So that's Sandy Creek, which is about halfway through to Top Crossing Hut, or Sandy Flat, on the King River. From here we head southeast, and there's two more crossings of the King River before we actually get to the Top Crossing Hut. So just making our way down here to the first of those crossings. This is the deeper of the two crossings when you go to Top Crossing Hut, so if you're okay with this one, the second one's not really anything to worry about. Now again, it was fairly deep and the river was moving pretty fast, so we actually pulled in here to get out and have a look. I was fully intending to walk it to check it out, but as luck would have it, a convoy of 4 other vehicles came back the other way, so I was able to check the depth while watching them drive it. So we decided to plunge on in. Like a lot of the high country rivers, it's a bit of a rocky entrance and a rocky sort of bottom, and as you can see they're pretty deep on this particular crossing. but it's not, even when the river's up, it's not a super long crossing, so yeah, we got through quite alright, which was good. So it's not actually very long along this part of the track. It's probably 500 or 600 metres, that's about it. And yeah, like there was today, there's sometimes a bit of water laying around. And you come to that second crossing. It's a really nice drive through to Top Crossing Hut. So if you're in the area, it's well worth checking out. So here's that second crossing. And a little bit wider, but shallow. It's got a bit of an island in the middle, so it comes up shallower before a deeper section again. But certainly not as deep as the first crossing. And from there, it's a pretty easy run through to Top Crossing Hut and the Top Crossing Hut campground. So it's a free camping area. There's a long drop toilet on the site. Great place to visit. I think if you've got a decent forward drive trailer or off-road camper trailer, you'd get a camper trailer in there. I've certainly seen them in there before. And that's Top Crossing Hut right there. So the history of this hut, just briefly, is that it was constructed in about 1957, late 50s anyway, by dog trappers, and it's right at the crossing of the King River, the third or top crossing, hence the name. As you can see, it's a pretty open campground. Someone had actually been there not too long before we got there, and that fire was still smouldering. We put some water on that and made sure it was out. I mean, admittedly, it's raining, it's wet, it's pretty low fire risk, but it's just good to leave them actually fully out. So that's the King River running right past the campsite, which makes it a great place to camp. And now we're heading back, so this is approaching that second river crossing from the other direction. From this direction you can see there how clear that water is. Still reasonably deep, but not as deep as the first one, not going up over the bull bar or the bonnet. Nice and steady, and no worries today or any other time. Good solid rock base, so these crossings, like a lot of the high country creeks, have a very solid base, so you don't have that risk like they do elsewhere in the country of bedding down into silt and actually getting stuck. So you can see the King River there on the left as we work our way back to that first crossing at Sandy Flat. So our intention here was to go back to Sandy Flat, take that first deeper crossing, and then from there actually head up the Longspur track onto the Stockyard track, Basin track, and across to Benny's or potentially Lake Cobbler as well. So yeah, definitely a lot deeper. Car's working pretty hard there, but no real issues making that crossing. Nice stable entrances and exits from those crossings as well. And yeah, once we get across here, it's just a short run back to Sandy Flat. as you can tell probably from the water on the camera, it's continued raining varyingly degrees the whole time we've been here, so the track is gradually getting slipperier and slipperier. So again, this is the deepest of the crossings. Again, we had the benefit of watching somebody else do this one just before us. You can see it's straight over the bull bar as soon as we get in there. Now, over this side of Sandy Flat, there's quite a few campsites along the river as well. Now, there's no long drop toilet facilities like there are down at Top Crossing, but these are, just bush camps, but great spot to camp. So you can see the direction we're coming from there, having taken that crossing at Sandy Flat, and you can see there's a crossing there, center camera now. Take note of that because we'll be back. So we went for a drive along here just to check out these campsites that are right along the river here at Sandy Flat, and there's quite a few of them, good size, nice flat ground, a little bit overgrown, the access into some of them, but well worth checking out. Be a great spot to camp for even a night, but ideally a weekend. So there's various spots both sides of the track, and it really does. We didn't drive the whole area, but it really does cover quite a large area on this side of the bank. There's little offshoot tracks, as you see that one on the left there. Yeah, there's one of the riverside camp spots there. How great would that be? Right on the river there. Definitely one to come back to and spend a bit of time there. As I said before, from here the intention was head out of the campground area and then head up Longspur track, or head up to the Longspur track and then onto the Stockyard track from there. And as you can see from that gate there, it is seasonally closed. The starting portion here was pretty easy going, but once we got up around the hill, it was steep, clay, slippery, all four wheels spinning, and we actually watched a guy in a patrol with what looked like about a 3-inch lift and 35-inch tyres, and he got nowhere. So we decided to call it a day and head home. So we're coming back now. You might remember earlier in the video we actually came down that track to the right. I'd forgotten that, saw the crossing straight ahead here and thought, that's our crossing, let's head back across. So this is not the crossing that we came across on, but I thought it was, and it wasn't until I was probably halfway across the river that I realised that. So the entrance this side is fine, nice and rocky. It gets very deep very quickly, very deep, right through the middle there. And as we come out this other side, you realise, hang on, this is not the nice solid rocky entrance or exit that we're used to. This is basically mud. So clearly, as deep as that crossing was, we weren't going to be reversing, so we had to get up here somehow. And you can see plenty of evidence there. As I said, it's not a great camera. Passengers got out to spot for me, so probably approached that a little slow, but I was just trying to crawl up there if that was possible with the lower tyre pressure. See the tyre marks there trying to climb the wall, but it may not look it, but that mud is just like grease. It is so slippery.
I can see my tyre marks there.
Trying to think about picking a line here that might work and keep most of the tyres on the ground. It's pretty lumpy. It's been dug out by some guys with big tyres. Now, if you watch my videos, you may have seen some footage of this on the Epic River Crossing video. That was just a short one we posted very soon after we actually did this trip, so yeah, apologies for the duplication. So we decided first up, get the Max-Trax out and see if we can get enough traction with the Max-Trax to actually get up this thing. So this probably gives you a bit better idea of just how chewed up and steep that exit was at this particular time. And yes, it's slippery. Even on this camera angle, you're probably not getting a sense of just how deep that actually is, but when I grab the next couple of Max-Trax, you might see that. Always handy that. So the Max-Trax have this side up printed on them. You can see there, that's a Max-Trax that's basically 1200 and it's almost vertical there and not really sticking out the end. Gives you some idea of just how deep and steep these ruts and holes were.
No, it's probably wider than that.
Finding the spot for that second one was a little tricky. You can see there, it's soft, slippery.
Alright, the tyres need to follow the orange things. So I'm going to need a spot, okay?
That's the plan. It's simple, isn't it? The tyres follow the orange things. So you can see there the right tyre at the front just wasn't quite actually making contact with that Max-Trax, so we needed an adjust there. Amazingly, none of us actually ended up on our backsides in that mud. I don't know how, but we didn't, fortunately. So yeah, we had a couple more goes. Even with the Max-Trax, that just wasn't going to happen, so ended up having to winch out of this one. So it was one of those times, certainly glad to have a winch. And although I've used the winch a few times, I think this is probably only the second time I've actually used it to recover my own vehicle. And that's got us up and out. So this shot gives you a bit of an idea of just how torn up. You can see that rock there. Just how torn up and lumpy. There's some bits of wood in there that other people had put in there. It's just a mess. Yeah, there's no other way to describe it. It was just a mess. So yeah, just packing the recovery gear away. And you can see there the rain's coming down. There's the Max-Trax, covered in a bit of mud. So time to give them a wash before we pack them back on the roof. There's my helper. I guess that's one thing for doing a winch recovery with some Max-Trax close to the river. You've got somewhere close at hand to wash the tracks up.
They look a bit more orange and a bit less mud. having been washed, aren't they?
Doing a good job.
Bit of a difference in colour there between the two, isn't there?
You can go down if you want.
Don't think it's really worth it.
So you might remember this one from the way in, and with all the rain we've had, you can see as we're heading out here, this is quite a bit slipperier than when we went in. We actually slid that last little section just there down into the water. So we're certainly glad to be from here on out nearly back on the bitumen, because these clay tracks were just getting slipperier and slipperier.